Daryl Recommends Podcast is a podcast recommending series and shouldn't be mistaken as a reviewing one. Opinions about each show are my own and should not reflect what each podcast has to offer. Content warnings aside, I believe if any recommendation in my series interests you, you should give it a chance, regardless of how I personally feel about the show.
So, I give you all the majestic town of Loudwater. Loudwater, well, at least part of it anyway. I built all this using a lot of assets that a bunch of people helped me with.
Very nice.
Loudwater is a rich town. It is one of those really bougie places that a bunch of rich folk moved to that was originally a small country town, and then they just kind of built it up, and it's only for them now. It's called the town of 1,000 grottos because it's mostly built in the foothills of the mountains nearby, and a lot of those hills themselves are hollow, filled with these little grottos that you'll be seeing on the screen in a moment. There is a problem in Loudwater, and that is that it has been so long under the control of people who are very wealthy that people who are not at all wealthy just don't live here anymore. Much of their
conflict has been at almost a standstill for a long time in Faerun. Peace is prospering, but something about reality feels wrong, and it all starts with 5 adventurers and a fatal ride on a chew. What's Left of Us is a live-action podcast using D&D's 5e tabletop RPG system. The story features 5 various creatives as our main player characters brought together for an epic quest by Jake Horn, who's our dungeon master. Episodes come out once a month, and the show is streamed live as they play, with VODs being uploaded immediately afterwards for those who couldn't watch the stream on YouTube. So, this is a little bit different from what I've usually have been recommending. Everything that I've been recommending has been either, like, people talking about stuff at this point, or like fictional stories. I haven't done a tabletop RPG show before, and trust me, I do have plenty I want to recommend. I just have not gotten around to actually recommending any. So if you've been wondering about that, here's our first one. And I'm starting with this show because this show has one thing that's kind of different compared to every single other tabletop show I've listened to, and that is it got me hooked so quick. I mentioned in my Red Valley video that I get pleasantly surprised when a show, like, I go into a show with 0 expectations to, like, what I expect, and then I, like, blown out of the water by, like, how, like, into it that I get, which is always a pleasant surprise. And if you kind of, like, want a reference for what I'm talking about, 2 of the big tabletop shows that I do listen to, like The Adventure Zone, took me, like, all the way up until the end of their 3rd arc for me to get really hooked into it. And for Rusty Quill Gaming, it took me until like the end of their prologue, which was like almost 20 episodes. I got super hooked into the story for this show, like by the end of the 2nd episode. That's how quick I was, and I was surprised by it, especially since it doesn't, like, at the moment, it doesn't go into like huge, epic fantasy battle quests the way that shows like The Adventure Zone and Rusty Quill Gaming do, but it's pretty good. It's really good, especially for something that I was just like, this is recommended by somebody I know, I'm gonna go listen to it. And it's a lot of fun. It's for a show where it's like not familiar, it's not something that like people were recommending me to listen to, or I'm not familiar with the cast like the other 2 shows I mentioned. I had a lot of fun with it. All the players are really great. Like, they have fun interactions with each other in character or out of character, which is always really nice when you're listening to a tabletop RPG show, because I also do listen to ones that are more onto like the one-shot based stuff, such as Strong Branching Out and Chapter Multiverse, than like just focusing on one gigantic epic fantasy quest, and this is really nice. And one of the other cool things too is not everybody can make it to the stream sometimes, so sometimes they'll split it off and they'll like take the people who are able to make it and do like a short epic quest, like mini quest with them. I said epic quest, I meant mini quests with those characters before they go and get the people who missed out to go do their own little mini quests. And I think that's fun rather than having to constantly delay, because as somebody who does do tabletop games, I get having to delay games. It's never fun. And one of the things that I really like about this show Other than just the fact that, like I said earlier, I love the in and out of character interactions between the players and their characters. But I just love also how J. Korn builds up the characters' backstories into the story without immediately being like, okay, so let's learn everything there is about Vernon. And then there's nothing else about Vernon that we ever have to know about. The mystery is over. Vernon's character arc is done, and it took like 3 episodes. And I'm just using that as an example because Vernon is the one who came to my head. I have a crab sitting on my desk. Which, speaking of Vernon, let me talk about the characters. Because there's 5 main characters. Those are our PCs. Run by them really quick. So, starting with Vernon, he's played by Ron. He's their human warlock. He's like a con artist. He's so funny. He's like super into scarves. He's super into taking money from people. This whole thing is just like, let's flip a coin, and if it lands on one side, Vernon's been in this town and has probably conned somebody out of something. Vernon is probably the kind of person who would try to get me to go into a pyramid scheme. That's the kind of character he is. He's great. He also has a whole thing with crabs. I have a little crab that sits on my desk, so it was really funny when I first started listening to the show. And they started talking about Vernon's whole crab god thing, and I was like, oh yeah, just like a little Carpenter I have sitting here. Carpenter is short for Crab Carpenter because I named her after Carpenter from the Silt verses. Isn't that right? I'm petting my crab. So then we got to our next character, who is Rathgurther. She's a half-orc bard, played by Mildred. She is great. Her whole thing is that she's also kind of a bit of a con artist, but instead of conning people from like you know, for money or for things, she pretends that she is this great hero named Rathgurther. It's all fake, and it's so funny that like how in character she stays. She has this like whole gimmick about that, and just like a lot of people are like, oh, isn't that like a comic book? And Rathgurther's like, no, I am real, ha ha ha, and she's fantastic. Especially since I think she doesn't flat out say like, oh, I'm not a bard, but like she also like kind of pretends that she's not a bard. Then there's Mel. They're the changeling rogue. They're played by Jinx.
Hi, Daryl here. I just wanted to cut in really quickly. I made a mistake recording this part of this video, and I didn't re-record it because this video is already almost 20 minutes long, and I didn't want to have to go and re-record everything. So, I made a mistake with this character's name. This character's name is not Mel, it's Mal. It's short for Maldress. And I didn't realize it until I was actually listening to episode 19, and I was like, hold on a second, I think I got a name wrong. In this case, I'm sorry, Jinx. I didn't mean to get Mal's name wrong. That was a mistake on my part. I'm bad with names. And also, just because it's been bugging me, I do want to mention earlier when I said I didn't get hooked on Taz until their 3rd arc, I was talking about Taz Balance. I'm not talking about Graduation, which would be really awkward considering Amnesty is my favorite season. Anyway, let's get back to the rest of this video.
Their whole thing is like they're on like a simultaneous like revenge quest being hunted for sport thing. That's really cool. I like them a lot. I like rogues. I think my first D&D character was a rogue. So whenever a rogue shows up, it's always like the cool savvy type, and I'm like, yeah, I like you. You do your thing. And just, I'm very interested in their story, because unlike with some of the other characters, like, also with Rathgurther, their, like, backstory hasn't been touched up too much, but, like, now they're starting to get into it, and I'm very intrigued. I'm very intrigued by that. I want to know more about Mel, because they're so interesting, and also just, like, non-binary rights. I love a good they, them. Then we have Emery Black. They're played by Star, who is the person that, like, I found out about the show from, but I'm gonna talk about the reasons for that in a different podcast because they have another podcast they're in that I listen to that I just will be recommending later. And Emery Black is their fighter tiefling. She's a bitch and I love her. She's on a revenge thing. She's ex-noble, but then stuff happened that you'll find out. It's pretty good. They focused on this quite a bit in the beginning, so I'm not gonna like dwell on it a bit too much just because, but it's very good. It's very interesting, especially with like the more recent episodes with a bunch of stuff that she does with our next character that I saved for last because she is my favorite and she is my sweet baby. Her name is Tim Tam. They call her Tim for short. She's played by Zoe. She's a gnome artificer. She is good girl. She has a dog, and she's my sweet baby child, and she is like the life and joy of the party. I love her so much. She really looks up to Rathgurther and Emery, because she's like full into the whole like, oh my god, Rathgurther is like an actual real super special hero who basically has the powers of God thing, and I just love that. I love that for her. She's such a good character. And these storylines for like these characters get so interesting so quick, because like I said, they don't rush too much into the character stories. That's like the one thing with some tabletop games that I at least have been in, when it comes to like building characters' backstories, is like I've had DMs in the past who kind of like rush into things way too quickly, so then the rest of the story is just kind of like how can I develop my character? You developed my character for me so early on. And it's always so good when podcasts do that. And I say that for this one, because I know we got other ones like the Adventure Zone and Rusty Quill Gaming, but this one is just kind of a lot more slow-paced, which is the only, like, downside of the show, in my opinion. It's the only thing about the show that is, like, kind of a downside, but it's not really, like, a thing I don't like, because I actually do like it, is that because the episodes are streamed, they're very, very long. And things tend to get slow and boring when they're trying to figure out what they're doing, but that's also accurate to how an actual D&D game is, so I don't see it as a downside. If you're somebody who prefers like edited shows like Rusty Quill Gaming and the Adventure Zone, where they cut out the like most of the parts where they're just like sitting there like, should I attack? What do you guys think? And then they're arguing for a second about like, what should I do? Should I do this? Should I do that? What? It's very good reference if you've never played a tabletop game before, and your only experience has been from edited shows like this. This is a really good show to like listen to and get like an idea and feel about like what a game is like. And like also just like this is also different because like I say it's so I call this a podcast. If you go and watch the show, because it's on YouTube, all their episodes are on YouTube. They do have a Spotify, which is where I normally listen to podcasts. However, it's not updated past episode 8 because Spotify sucks, which I understand. So I recommend listening to it on YouTube because you also get the physical aspects, like I said physical, I meant visual aspects of the show. They use a program called Heroes Forge along with, it's escaping me the top of my head at the moment. But they use that. They talk about that program a lot. So just go listen to the show. You'll know what I'm talking about. Because I'm not sponsored by anybody. So I don't have to promote your products. Anyway, you can go watch the show and learn about that from them. But the visual stuff is really funny. And the thing they use to like show the maps and the characters and stuff is really fun. So you get some nice visual gags, and you can also see like the players if you're into seeing who's playing the games a lot. I don't really pay attention a lot to the visual stuff just because I'm drawing while I'm watching this, which I'm going to be most likely drawing the art for this episode of Daryl Recommends Podcast while listening to the newest episode, because I missed the newest episode because I was at work, so I missed the stream for it and I haven't listened to it yet, so I'm probably going to be doing that while I draw this next one. So there you go. If you want to know like how I've been liking the show, because I know exactly what I'm going to draw for this, but you're probably already watching me draw this while listening to this. So that's like useless information for you. Who cares though? I'm going to say it anyway. It's my show. They also cover things if you're worried about content warnings. And I always mention the content warnings because I feel like it's important for people to know what they're getting into when starting a new podcast. If you're, or just like any piece of media, but if you are worried about certain content for things, they do cover the things that absolutely won't show up in the show at the beginning, because one of the things that I also appreciate with the show, what they do is they take the time to like ask each of the players, like, hey, what are you comfortable with? As well as putting in a system in place that they haven't used yet in the show as far as I remember, but is there if they need it, where if something is getting too much for one of the players, they could immediately opt it out and they'll just skip that bit. That's at the beginning of it. However, like with every single piece of thing out there, it's not going to cater to every single individual's needs for what they need to have be warned about before starting a show or before watching a thing or before reading a thing. So generally just like as a warning, like if you're not into typical D&D violence, this might not be a show for you. There's honestly nothing really explicit or gory in this. I mean, there's like some gore as you get with like fantasy fighting, but it's like nothing more than like a guy gets his head cut off, a guy gets stabbed through with something, but they don't like go into like super extreme detail as you would with like maybe like a horror show or whatnot. So if you can stomach that, you should be fine. It's like nothing too like extreme has happened so far in this show. And as I said before, they're pretty good with like letting everybody know like if you're not comfortable, you don't have to watch, you can just skip. This is like the stuff that's not going to happen because of our own players' comfort. So you should be fine with that. I'm not going to throw you into a show and be like, oh yeah, they described the amount of details in the viscera that they just made by slaughtering a bunch of bandits. And overall, it's just a really good tabletop RPG show. I like finding new ones that aren't just the big ones. I keep referencing Rusty Quill Gaming and The Adventure Zone, but that's because those are the two biggest long-form story ones that I have listened to. And before you ask, yes, I will be doing episodes of those eventually. Eventually, I will get around to doing that. But I want to focus on some other shows first. I have a list now of what shows I am going to recommend next. Haha, there you go. And also the cast is just nice. I gotta like put that in there. I like doing that whenever I mention shows where I have talked to the people who've worked on the shows. Just because it's like one of those things where it's one of those things to me where it's just like, you know, the people on the screen are also nice behind the screen. And I've been doing something for this show that I have not done with a previous show, where I've been live reacting some of my own thoughts and bits whenever, like, not like excessively, but like, you know, whenever a certain thing comes up, and I go into the Discord that one of the people in the show has made, where they have a channel for the show, and I put my little thought in there, and sometimes I get a reply from people, and it's like, yay. I'm glad that you like me annoying you guys. Yay. And also just like, yeah. I just love it. I like it a lot. With that being said, I am going to now go and link all the relevant websites down below. Any Ko-fi, Patreon, whatever sites. Sometimes I look them up before I record these. Sometimes I don't until afterwards. So you might have like a, you know, you never know. And also, if you have a podcast you want me to listen to, please recommend it. I always ask for recommendations. I will listen to just about anything as long as it's not gross. It's not too much. I have a list of shows I'm gonna listen to next. I got a list of shows I'm gonna re-listen to specifically for the series next. Yeah, and if you want to find me on other social media sites, I got links down below. But for the love of God, maybe not be a great time to follow me on Twitter because Elon Musk ruins everything. So that's that. Goodbye, I hope you have a nice day, and I will talk to you all about more podcasts later.